So, Angela,
Oh,
what is this?
it's 8:30. It's time for the magic and wisdom of essential oils with Joseph Carter and I and our special guest today, Anna Pageau, who is uh, a a longtime friend of mine. I think any friend that I have over 12 months is a longtime friend of mine. Anna and I have known each other for, I don't know, at least 6 years.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Anna is a certified aromatherapist, and you're certified in animal aromatherapy too, right?
I
Yeah.
am.
You studied with what's her name?
Kelly.
Kelly Holland Azoro,
Yep.
and she's in Florida, and that was when you were living in Florida.
Kelly's actually up
Oh,
in
she's
North
North
Carolina, I
Carolina.
think.
Yeah, yeah,
But she used to live in Florida, so it
right.
came in handy when I was dealing with Florida animal issues. So
Yeah. And then you transplanted to Nevada. So our theme today is kind of like bloom where you are planted.
Mhm.
And Anna is our Nevada director for the National Association for Holistic Aromatherapy. I'm the Oregon director, Joseph's member, and he's coming to conference in October. Um, but you switched more from doing aromatherapy to gardening, but it's proven to be really interesting. So, with the magic and wisdom today, we would like to talk about Mother's Day. We'd like to talk about blooming where you're planted. We'd like to talk about longevity. Boy, we've got a lot of stuff to cover, don't we, Joseph?
Well, and we have a whole
We
hour.
have a whole hour. We
Whoa.
do. We do. And this is
Whoa.
a very participatory type of presentation today. It's more like a conversation. It's not even really a presentation, it's a conversation. And we like to talk about the sustainability of our plants, our plant allies. We always bring in an acupoint and an oil. And we're going to talk a little bit about yarrow because it's a very hardy, resilient plant. We're going to
Wait,
talk about,
wait, wait.
yes,
Can we do a little bit of aroma qigong first?
aroma qigong. Yes, please. Let's have
Please.
some.
Okay. I'm going to take an oil blend that I make. I call it Tree Mendes, Black
Tremendous.
Spruce, Siberian Fir, and Grand Fir. So they're all trees. So Tree Mendes. Okay. Calm the nervous system, stabilize the nervous system. I can use that living in the modern world. I got a little in the palm of my hand, pericardium May.
Okay.
I'm
Can
gonna
I
do
just
this. You
make
can
some?
do this too. And
I'm
you can
just going
do
to
this
make
with
some
your
nice tea.
imagination essential oil, if you will. All right. I'm going to make a cup with my hands over my nose and mouth, not my eyes.
I'm imagining.
Inhale.
Actually, I've got some. No, 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 no. I'm going to do
And
drink
again.
because
Oh, good.
I'm almost there.
Inhale. And again. And you know, they say the third time is the charm.
Hmm.
Inhale. Again.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood.
I did the blue yarrow I had, which is
Ah.
for seasonal allergies. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, yarrow blooms where you are planted.
yes, you guys got to see my side because I grabbed. So one of the things I keep on my desk is actually the
Ah.
dried flowers, just
Mhm.
kind of to remind me that even these are scented. So I keep this just to, keep me grounded and all of
Uh-huh.
that kind of stuff. And it's just a fun little reminder on my little altar that I have over here on the desk.
Mm, 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 mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was younger, oh, so much younger than today, um, I used to go out and gather yarrow at different locations, and I would gather the stalks, because it's a
Hmm.
rhizome. You don't want to break it up, pull it up, or anything like that. But if you cut the stalks, okay, when they're nice and tall and not yet mildewed, which they often get, Okay. Especially I'm coastal California at this age, right? You cut them, give yourself maybe 12, 13 inches. So you're going to end up getting down after they're dry to 10, 11. And I
Hmm.
used to make Yarrow's stock sets for doing the I Ching, for doing the
Oh.
manipulation of the Yarrow sticks.
Mm,
Um, and I have a set from Mount Shasta. I have a set
mm.
from Point Reyes. My entrepreneurial spirit said, I'll sell these. It's like I haven't sold a single one. I've given a few away. Um, but that, you've got it on your desk there, that connection with plant, you know, listening to, feeling the spirit of the plant, the message, the gift, whatever. Um, you're there, you're growing with it, you're blooming with it. Tell us about your yarrow.
So we're pretty blessed here is that it's one thing that will grow and spread.
Uh-huh.
Um, I I live in a very challenging climate to be able to grow anything,
Mm-hmm.
and then my soil is also not the happiest soil. So to be able to have a plant and a plant that is such an ally when it comes to every aspect of it, whether you use it when it's growing or you create an essential oil with it, or you take the dried out blooms and you keep them, you have that aromatic available. So it's just one of those plants that, I love being able to have it available to me all of the time because it's here and it's growing and it's just happy and spreading and doesn't need a lot of water, and it kind of pops up wherever it wants to. It's kind of like, I think on social media, especially this time of year, you see everybody talking about dandelions and leave the dandelions alone and stuff like that, which I do have dandelions, but yarrow is akin to dandelions for me on our
Right.
property. So I'm
Yeah.
blessed in that regard.
Mhm.
Asteraceae, the
Yeah.
sunflower family.
Yeah.
Um,
You can grow sunflowers too. They do well there. Yeah.
yeah. A lot of the Asteraceae really actually likes what we call as humans disturbed soil because we disturbed it.
Mhm.
And then it goes in and colonizes or recolonizes, right?
Yeah.
This is, I mentioned a couple years back, and oh God, I can't even remember the title right now, but helichrysum being used in Bosnia Herzegovina area as a way of a cash crop, but also on disturbed soils and disturbed soils that had been landmined.
Mm.
Okay. And so very carefully recovering the wounded soil. Um,
Mhm.
I always like that quite often these oils, like the Yarrow we were talking about today, are profound skin healers, are profound soil healers. That's what they do in their environment. And there is something in their essence. Um, Maybe Angela, you can talk a little bit about this. Um, what do we know botanically about we're in energetics of
Oh,
Yarrow?
for yarrow?
Mhm.
For yarrow, we have the energetics we talk about our aromatic energetics. What is the frequency of this plant? And we have it as a sweet green pungent.
Yeah, yeah,
So sweet
Mhm.
and green is really circulating, and the pungent gives it a little lift and clarifying.
yeah.
So I really like that about it. The movement of it, as Peter Holmes describes it, is a gathering and circulating, but then we get that little bit of lift at the end.
There
So,
is that pronounced kind of go to the sun,
mhm,
Asteraceae, sunflower.
exactly. It has its tone, which we talk about the different tones. It has a tone quality that allows it to be a restorative and a relaxant.
Yeah.
So that restorative quality comes in. When we talk about in Chinese medicine, like what meridians does it have an affinity to? We're talking about liver, stomach, bladder, conception vessel, and governing vessel.
Yeah.
Um, and in five element Chinese medicine, it has an affinity to the wood element, which we're still in wood element right now, and earth element. So, keeping us grounded, holding that soil.
And an interesting thing from the herbal aspect of it is you can use the flowers and the leaves as tea and stuff like that. And eating the leaves when they're fresh, it is a bitter, so it's good for your digestive system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and liver detoxification. Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
need to be careful because it is super bitter, but
well, and it's also astringent. It's like
yeah,
It's
your
drying out. Yeah.
your mouth just goes, which
yeah.
is part of why it helps close a wound. Okay.
Hmm.
The poultice, the application of crushed leaves. I mean, let's do some magic and some wisdom, okay?
Yeah.
Achillea millefolium. Achilles is Trojan War. He's a physician and a soldier, okay? He has his Achilles heel. You know that. There's a whole myth on that one. But the idea is that he applied poultices of yarrow leaves for wounds, and these are going to be sword and spear wounds. They're going to be a bloody mess. And so you're going to want to staunch the flow, and that's what the astringency can do.
Hmm.
And then, really, if you've got enough of the leaf, and it's broadly distributed, okay, and probably areas where battles have been historically are disturbed soil, okay. So the poultice becomes something of a band-aid along with its astringency. Am I making sense there?
Yep.
Absolutely.
And then millifolia is 1,000-leaved, right? From the
Right.
Latin. And if you look at those little leaves, it's like, wow, it's the same thing over and over. It's fractals on fractals on fractals.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm.
So it has this affinity with the blood system.
Right. Yeah. And when you mentioned the liver, you mentioned the conception vessel.
Mm-hmm.
With conception vessel, I'm always thinking of not just the conception vessel has the main yin line, but then especially the branch earth lines, earth yin. So liver, spleen, and kidney. Okay.
Yeah, that conception vessel being the sea of all the yin channels.
Right. So our friend spleen 6, okay, 3 yin meeting.
Yes.
It has alternative names because not everybody calls it the same thing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the names is Sea of Blood. Okay.
Right.
It's a master point for the uterus. Maybe we should,
That
next lifetime I'm coming back as a woman. Okay. So this entire lifetime I am premenstrual. Okay. So maybe one of you two should help locate spleen 6.
All right, I'm looking for the card. I should have pulled it up because I do have a spleen 6 card.
I think we have a new line there. Hey, Angela, there's a card for that, right?
There you go.
There's a card for that. If you haven't gotten the AcuAroma Therapy card deck, it is invaluable in finding these points, locating points. I'm just going to hold it up here.
If you haven't gotten the deck, why not?
Yes, there it is.
Okay.
This is a great.
So 1 hand's width from the bottom to the top, that's called 3 body inches or 3 sun. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not a rule of thumb, it's a rule of hand. It's an offhand measurement. Okay.
So you're going from the inner ankle bone.
Right. So that very tip of the medial malleolus, the part that sticks sideways the most.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
4 finger widths up from that.
Right. And if you run your fingers up and down that line, it's very tender tissue. And you feel the bone, and then right behind the bone, it's almost as if it pockets in. It's very yin and draws in there. And it's one of those points that finds it for you as you run your fingers along it.
And it may be very tender. Yeah, it's always tender on me because I just tend to have a damp constitution and I always need help on my spleen.
It's one of the points, quote unquote, classically, okay? In Chinese medicine, you're going to assess a dude by going to stomach 36 and maybe stomach 42 on the top of the foot and seeing how the chi of the legs are because they're supposed to be out there working in the field. Okay? Mm-hmm. To assess a female, you're going to go to spleen 6, okay? Maybe also liver 3 and feel the pulses there, okay? And that will give you an indication of the flow of chi, okay, and the flow of blood. And especially this idea, the flow of the chi in the blood, okay? And that's where yarrow is all about, the chi in the blood.
Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this?
Yes.
Let's
Well, and
do
an interesting thing too is that also is falling right near your Achilles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 He was a healer after all, right?
Right?
I've got my blue yarrow. I'm using blue yarrow, diluted to a 25% dilution. You could go 15 to 25,
Right.
whatever you're comfortable with.
So
And if you're trained in aromatherapy, this might sound like a very big dilution, but this is the dilution that we use for AcuAroma Therapy.
And
Because
I'm a bad AcuAroma therapist. I forgot my yarrows at the office. Okay.
what do you use?
But I have some blue tansy, or what was more properly called Moroccan chamomile.
Yes. Same family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Sometimes yarrow likes to sneak into my chamomile bed in my garden and it tries to disguise itself. And I'm like, I know which you are. Trying to impersonate chamomile.
Plant infiltrators.
Yes. Anna, I was thinking of another soil that, or another plant that loves to grow in compromised soil, and that's mullein. You've got that growing there. I love that plant. I always call it nature's toilet paper. It's so soft and fuzzy.
Although you do have to be careful, and I think one thing people don't realize is that mullein one way can be great toilet paper. The other way, not so much.
So
A great
much.
irritant.
Yeah. It's not Charmin after all. Okay.
Exactly.
Enjoy the go, but not so. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do with this plant?
So, I mean, for me, right now it's infiltrating my kitchen garden space. So it will be getting eradicated this week so that I can clean up certain spots. But a lot of the larger leaves, I will be saving those and drying them so that I can have them available for tea, especially like Joseph is aware, we're on the opposite sides of mountains. It was a very dry winter, so it is reminding me to be prepared for wildfire. So I will be saving a lot of the leaves so that I have that because it's got the affinity for the lungs to help support us when we have a lot of wildfires. And then I will let some of it keep growing so that I can collect the flowers once it starts blooming.
Well, that's one thing I realized with a local here in Sacramento near the river. The mullein there is tremendously oily. It again, I hadn't really thought of it as a fire hazard, but you get out to August, September, those leaves are still very oily and dry. Okay.
Mhm.
And they are fuel for a fire for sure.
But the tea, if you're drinking the tea during fire season, it's going to really help clear those lungs if you're, inhaling any of that smoke from the wildfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an experience last summer with wildfires, and I'm like, oh my goodness, did not realize how much it was compromising I lost my voice, and it's like, wow. So I'm doing CD22, and I'm doing, large intestine 20. I'm doing all kinds of things.
Yeah, we haven't had a really bad fire season in a couple years, but there's definitely a lot of those points here so that we could just try and breathe and using different things. But yeah. So yeah, I welcome mullein where a lot of people would not because of knowing that it's going to help with some of those things that can be nature's reminder that she's in charge, not us.
Yeah.
It
used to be the line was nature bats last.
Yeah.
Okay. And you better be careful. What was the last pitch that you threw? Okay, for the baseball analogy. Yeah.
I'm really loving this yarrow on Spleen 6. There was an invigorating feeling, almost a warming. I've never experienced it as a warming sensation, but today I did.
Yeah, that's the chi in the blood.
Yeah.
With chi and heat, okay, there is warmth and there is heat and there is fire. And sometimes the term heat gets used for like heat in the blood really should better translated has fire in the blood. It's something you don't want in the blood. You definitely want warm blood. You want someone to be warm blooded, right? And that's going to be the best blood for the uterus as a nest, okay, to hold an egg, right? But if there's fire in the blood, which you might see in red marks on the skin, a pimple is your classic red hot thing, okay? And then the whitehead would be the toxin in the blood, right? And all these azulene, all these blue oils are very good at clearing heat out of the blood, but still preserving the warmth. So they're cooling rather than cold. Am I making sense there?
Yeah.
That's a really important herbal distinction, a medicinal distinction. That again, Anna, you're local. Again, Yarrow grows a lot of different places and adapts to each and every one of them. Okay. When I used to gather them, right, if I get closer to Point Reyes and the seashore, they're short. Okay. Out in the oak scrub area, it could get really, really tall. Okay. Mount Shasta was about halfway between and much thicker, sturdier, more mountainous, if you will. What's your yarrow like? What blooms where you are planted, if you will?
It depends on where it's growing on our property, just because of being in the high desert. I planted some around a water spigot because I figured that would be a perfect place to have it, because it would get just a little bit of water when the spigot would drip. And that one does get tall because it's getting a little bit more moisture than it would in other areas. And then some of it that the seeds have spread, or the rhizomes have reached a little pocket. A lot of those ones are a lot shorter because they're just not getting water unless we get a rainstorm or something like that. But it spreads and it's beautiful, and it's covering and cooling the ground around it so that it can keep growing. But the flower stalks do stay a lot shorter in those areas where it needs to conserve its energy, is what I feel like, is that it's just kind of conserving its energy, staying short, protecting the ground so that it can keep spreading. And then where it gets a little bit more water, those stalks definitely get tall. Even the the leaf gets taller. And then the flower stalks are probably a good 2.5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
this
go ahead, Angela.
Our spleen 6 point. I just wanted to make note that this acupoint is the meeting point of not just the spleen, but the kidney and the liver channels as well. So spleen, kidney, liver. Yeah. So it's this 3 yin crossing. Yeah. So it's not just about the spleen at that point. it's affecting liver and
yeah. Well, then in the deeper ideas of Chinese medicine, the blood is generated by the kidney energy because we inherited the ability, and the bone marrow, our bone being part of the water element in kidney. Okay. That's where it's generated from. Okay. It is then sustained by the spleen, by what we eat and how we exercise. Because spleen oversees the muscles and, of course, digestion. Okay, I'm getting hungry. We'll talk about that later. Okay. And then the liver, which is the regulating energy. Okay. Especially within a woman, this is most noticed in the regulation of the hormonal cycle. Okay. Which is carried through the blood. Right. And so the 3 of these are always a unity in blood. Okay. And all 3 of those, along with having this yin or blood quality, have a qi quality. Okay. Your spleen qi is your digestive energy. All right. Your liver qi is how well your qi is flowing, whether it's frustrated, I need liver 3, or whether it's, I'm a free and easy rambler, I'm just hiking through the hills. It's a wonderful day, right? And then the deeper rooted one is this kidney qi, okay? This is the inherent energy. This is the energy of the seed. This is the genetics. Okay. And one of the things we know or notice, Anna, like you did, is like sometimes the kidney chi is short and squat because it is adapting its genetics to its blooming where it's planted. Okay. And sometimes it's taller because those same genetics can bloom differently where it's planted that time. Right. So spleen 6, I'm a cheerleader for spleen 6. Okay. I just got to admit it. All right. All right. 1 point can do 3 things easy. Okay. Master point for the uterus. Okay. Again, next lifetime, I'll check one out. Okay. They say for a guy, the prostate is our uterus. Okay. What the heck? Okay. They got to, we got to say something. That's mansplaining. I mean, that's the
Mansplaining.
Well, and then the chi in the blood. This is one of my, like, when you look at a meal and you think of the nutrition that's in it, that's the nourishment, that's the yin, that's kind of the unactivated blood, the meal. But then the chi that you get by mixing or spicing or by what the cook brings to the process of the cooking, right? There is a sense in our own human biochemistry, or like I like to call it, bio-cooking, okay? A lot of people I teach don't want to hear the word chemistry. They freak out, okay? So I just say it's cooking, okay? And everyone's favorite form of chemistry is eating, okay? And we eat something after it's been chemically transformed. We do that. We cook our own blood. This is actually one of the ideas of the triple warmer, okay? It's a weird organ. There's really nothing quite like it in the Western world. And what it is, it's cooking watery substances at higher and higher levels of refinement for their particular uses. And again, the quality we most want to cook well into the blood is that there's good flowing chi in the blood.
So I want to take that to another level. Okay, bear with me. As gardeners, as stewards of the earth, we are sort of the chefs in our own little garden wherever we are planted, right? And so the intention that we take into, people step into my medicine garden out here that I can see from my office upstairs here, and they're like, what are these plants? And so, there's always an education process, but I have neighbors, I'm sorry to say, that are jealous right now because I have 8 artichokes at the beginning of May on my artichoke plant. And they're like, how'd you do that? And I said, well, I do a little of this and a little of that. And I come out and I talk to them and I take the snails off every day and relocate them. And it's how we put our intention into that soil to be good stewards to Mother Earth, which is the only planet we got, guys. We got to take care of it. And learning how to live with it, not just how can I change this and make it my way, or, those kinds of things. It's like, how do I work with nature? And I think, Anna, that's what you've been trying to figure out when you've been in Nevada. It's like, how do I work with this? I really want to help you.
Yeah.
Help me help you.
And that is something that I think is definitely key to what I try to do, because I've originated here in Nevada. And so I did, I always knew that, hey, I'm in the high desert and the weather's crazy and stuff like that. But I will say, being older, being more in tune with the earth, learning that just how much our weather patterns have changed really has to change how you're paying attention to the planet around you, because a lot of things that maybe bloomed 20 years ago, 25 years ago, aren't necessarily surviving because our weather patterns have changed so much and we aren't getting the rainstorms or the snowstorms or whatever like we used to. And Yarrow is a perfect example of for us here in Nevada, it's something that we can just kind of let grow and do what it wants to do because it isn't going to overtake things. But for like you, Angela, it may be one that you have to be a little bit more careful with just because it's getting a little bit more rain. People on the East Coast really have to pay attention because it can become considered a noxious weed because it's going to take over the gardens because of that rhizome that's going to just go where it wants to go and stuff. I mean, luckily, that one compared to some of the other noxious weeds I have is easier to remove and say, no, you need to stop here. So, it is one of those things that you do blooming where you're planted. You do need to really slow down and pay attention to what you have that's naturally growing near you because those plants are going to tell you what can do well. And then also say, okay, this one's going to do well. And because of the family that it's in or whatever, you can also bring in these plants that are going to do well. So understanding your plant families is definitely an important thing as a gardener because that is going to help direct what you can do. I can grow artichokes, but my artichokes are not going to start blooming until probably August.
Yeah.
So that's one of the definite huge differences that you see.
And those artichokes will tend to be like hard little rocks.
Actually, as long as you tend your soil well, because the soil and understanding those roots, what's below, is so important. But my parents have beautiful artichokes. I'm just getting started, but
the soil is the blood.
Yeah, the soil is the blood. Yes, the soil is
absolutely.
You have something in your garden that you mentioned to me a couple years ago, and it is thriving. And this relates to longevity, and that is your goji berries.
Oh, yes. I was actually just at a friend's house this week, and she's like, "Do you want some goji berries?" Because her goji berry, she's lived on her property for 25 years, where I've only been on our property for 5. And her goji berry plant has kind of overtaken a corner of her garden. So that is a plant that thrives in the high desert and does really well. And we're blessed to be able to have that plant that does so well in this extreme environment that we have. And yeah, I love my goji berries, and they're blooming out fabulously this year.
Nice.
Goji is a major liver and kidney tonic, liver, blood, kidney, yin. All right. And it has a sweet flavor which gets you the spleen in there. Okay. So it's idyllic food for building blood. It's also often considered a fertility tonic. The gifting of goji berries to a newlywed couple, okay, is go forth and multiply, okay? Bring more berries into the world. Boys and berries, okay. Anyway. So you have the yarrow there that's going to clear heat, unneeded heat, or help heal wounds in the blood in the soil, okay? And then you have the goji, which is major nutrition, all right? It is I was going to say the lifeblood of the blood, but that's a pretty good line, actually. Yeah.
Sometimes you outdo yourself.
Yeah, I'm beside myself quite often. That's not an excuse. That's just a description, okay? Yeah. But for me, this is part of the plant magic. There are relationships with plants where we can put words to, but we can appreciate. I don't know that we can understand them fully. I love trying. Don't get me wrong. All right. But the appreciation and the grokking, feeling a part of the process is more important than my description. And that if I can work with the process, that's more important than having a complete scientific understanding of the process.
Yeah. I watch my plants a lot. Anna, do you watch them? Like you go out there, like, what are you doing today? Like,
You
which way?
talk to them. We know you talk to them. Okay.
I do. I talk to them. I know you might think it's weird, but I have to because I'm making hydrosols. And I
Mhm.
have to have this relationship with them so that I know when they're going to tell me that they're ready to be made into a hydrosol. And that's real, it's fun. It's a really fun process. So,
Well, and I think the other thing that's really fascinating, if you do take that time to slow down while you're in your gardens, or even if you go to a botanical garden and slow down and pay attention to the animals that are there, the insects, because so many people just, one, you don't take the time. And, what insects are showing up though? Because something about yarrow that I love and is amazing, especially if you're a gardener, is that yarrow attracts ladybugs and ladybugs eat aphids.
Right.
So, it becomes that you actually get to slow down and pay attention to that cycle and those circles that get created within Mother Nature because she really does know how to help take care of us. We don't need all of these chemicals that all of us man-made crazy people, not us because we are not in that world, but but all of those man-made chemicals, we don't need them. We need to pay attention to the plants and go, oh, you attract ladybugs and the ladybugs are going to help me with my aphids. So then I don't have to use anything to help protect the other plants. So if I
mhm.
plant yarrow as a companion to something that's attracting aphids, then the ladybugs will come and then to the yarrow, and then they'll eat the aphids off of whatever plant's next to it.
Yeah.
So it's just really a matter of slowing down. Pay attention.
I have a funny story. Our mailman, who's a real character, he came to our house one day last year. It was summertime, and he says, "I have something for your garden." I'm like what? Like, am I getting a package? No. He had been driving around in his little mail truck with the praying mantis for a
Yeah.
couple of hours. He said, I found this, it just flew in here. And he said, I thought of your garden first. And he said, I wanted to bring it to you.
Aw,
But that was so cute that he brought me the praying mantis.
that's awesome.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
had a couple praying mantis last year. It's too cold to find them this year yet, but last year, because we're in the desert, I had a couple that were more brown, like a really pale brown rather than the green. And I hadn't really seen that before because every time you look them up online, they're always the green ones. But
Right.
it was really fascinating to see that they were more connected with my environment.
Uh-huh. They had colored themselves to your environment. Wow.
They they blew they got bloom where you're planted down. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, and luckily I haven't invited. That is another thing is that being in the desert, like you don't know what insects to, we've got plenty of bad ones, but you don't know what insects to expect. And just paying attention to those plants and the allies that they are to us, they bring in those insect allies that we need. And so
Mhm.
being able to pay attention to that in the desert, I didn't expect to find one just show up, and I had like five of them.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
Huh.
Angela, you were talking about both. You were talking about like listening, okay, and that within braiding sweetgrass. What's her name? Uh,
Robin, I actually have
Robin
that
Peter.
book sitting right next to me.
Yeah, it's on my desk at the office. Yep, always. Yeah.
That's right.
Um, so people are talking about talking to the plants, okay, and I love the conversation. I'm always going to go, but are you listening? Okay, are you hearing what they're saying? Okay, and insects are singing, and they're singing the stories of the plant world. Okay, um, and just that, you know, crickets can drive you crazy. All right, until you kind of see where the song is. And I've heard people record it and then slow it up and speed it down, back and forth with it, and actually make symphonies out of it. Okay. If it's the heat of summer and the mosquitoes around and the crickets are loud, it's just not my favorite thing. Okay. But if you could slow down, you use that term, and I like it a lot, Anna. Um, Slowing down and listening go together. right? And really, I mean, this is I think the art of gardening is not doing it too fast, okay? Because it won't let you.
No, it
Try.
won't.
You'll try. You want it to be done, but the old fable is you plant the seed. Okay, you go out a couple days later, you dig up the soil to see if it's sprouted and if it's rooting yet. It's not, so you cover it back up. And you go out a few days later and you dig it up again to see if it's sprouted or rooted and it's dead. Okay, you just got to leave it. You got to have that faith and quiet.
Yeah, you do. And it's one of those things, as hard as it is in the high desert to do gardening, starting your seeds. And I think that's been one of the things since we finally kind of settled here. I had done a lot of it before when I moved around other places, but really settling here and starting a lot of my seeds indoors. And maybe that's part of the difference because I'm starting them indoors and looking at how they're starting. What are those first little leaves, the dicots and all of that kind of stuff? What do they look like? And, so now I actually have friends that'll send me a picture that has a little tiny plant with 4 leaves on it. And they're like, what is this? Most of the time I'm pretty right on what it is, but that slowing down and being able to recognize, oh, that's a sunflower, and oh, that's a tomato plant, and oh, that's a pepper plant. That's just something that most people can't do because they're not slowing down,
Yeah.
or they're buying stuff that's already, they go to the garden center and they pick up a plant that's already maybe even got blooms on it. And, you don't people aren't taking that time. And, as a gardener, I will admit, like yarrow, because that's our plant of the top of the hour. I cannot get it to start from seed in my house. I've tried. I've tried a couple times, and it says that it's light dependent and all of that kind of stuff. So I have it underneath my grow light. I haven't buried it in my soil. I have amazing seed starter soil and stuff like that. And I haven't been able to get one to start yet, but letting it do its thing in the garden, it's everywhere. It's well, not everywhere, but a lot of it's where I want it to be, on the edges to attract all of my insects. So.
Yeah, and that clonal expansion, that's what rhizomes do, right?
Yeah.
Seeds are too expensive. It takes too much time to get a seed. Let's just do this. Let's
Yeah.
And some seeds need that. They need to be in the soil through the winter. It's sort of like they're acclimating themselves. There's those seeds that you spread out in the fall and they're not going to grow, but know that they need that frozen state so they can come back. And I always find that really fascinating. I want to get back a little bit to the vibration because, I always notice this relationship between the pollinators and the insects in my plants. And we know that the plants are giving off a vibration. We know that with the oils, the aromatic frequency.
Right.
But they are giving off different vibrations to attract pollinators when they need them, and also to repel predators when they need that too. They'll change their chemistry.
Right.
So I always find that there's this entire conversation that's going on outside my window here that I can't quite tune into, but I like to go and immerse myself in that space. I'm grounding, I'm touching the earth, I'm touching plants, I'm smelling plants, and then I become a part of the fabric of that, because I think too many times we get separated from nature. We just think, oh yeah, that's nature. And we forget that we are nature.
Right. The observer versus participant.
Yeah. We're an interwoven piece of it, and we cannot keep separating ourselves from it.
That's definitely something that is being more on the gardener farmer side of everything, just listening to everything that's going on in our society right now. It's like we really need to get back to being that participant with everything that we're doing, whether it's as an aromatherapist, whether it's as an herbalist, whether it's as a consumer of any plant material. We really need to slow down and get connected again with what we have available to us, because the farmers are out there working so hard. And when you get the plant at the grocery store, what vibration is left in it? You know, have you taken the time to connect with it, or are you just you're getting the harried, rushed energy from the farmer that's doing the best he can to get food to the grocery stores? And I
Right.
think that's a connection that a lot of people aren't necessarily understanding. And how is that impacting you as you're connecting with whatever it is that you're consuming?
So, Anna, you realize you're asking people to get dirt under their fingernails, okay? You're asking for that, okay?
Considering I do it every day, yes, I want you to do that.
Yeah. Well, and
Your nails short.
where I am, I'm in a mobile home park and I'm kind of recovering one. I call it an urban restoration project. It's called My Life. That would be an urbane restoration. But anyway, um, how do we do that? Okay. Yeah.
Do it in community.
Yeah. Well, and I want those individuals within the community to be growing something, growing community.
Absolutely.
Okay. And growing a plant. Um, farmers markets are a great place to get food, but also there's often small plants. Okay.
Mhm.
And, when we talked earlier this week, one of the things I like to encourage people to grow is rosemary. It's hard to kill it, which is a really good thing for beginning gardeners. Okay. Once it's established, it isn't going to go away easy. Okay. It really will go across a variety of ecotypes, weather patterns, etc. You probably have to think about where you're going to site it. Okay. You,
Yeah.
you're going to get a useful herb out of it. You can get useful essential oil out of it. If you
It's a
need
good
food,
producer of
it's
essential
going to
oil.
bring them to town, right? Um,
As somebody that lives in the high desert, I do want to touch on that because rosemary it's fabulous. I have it everywhere, but siting it where you're going to plant it is super important, because anybody that lives kind of in a high desert climate, or let's throw North Dakota, just because most of us know North Dakota gets really cold, it doesn't like to get too cold. It can handle 30, 28 degrees um, Fahrenheit. But if it gets much colder than that, then you can kill it. It doesn't like to get too cold. And as long as it's in soil that drains and it doesn't get, as gardeners call it, wet feet, then it does phenomenally. But, and then the opposite, if you think of climates like Florida, southern parts of Florida, where they have a lot of moisture, you will want to have it in a pot because it doesn't want to have those wet feet that a lot of the plants that survive in Florida do have. So those would be two of the extreme climate things to pay attention to. But yeah, rosemary it's an amazing plant. It loves to be touched. So my rosemary plant, I walk past it and I pet it and then just smell my hand, because
yeah,
who
yeah.
can resist that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I love rosemary, and it's a fabulous plant. And I personally do have to keep it in a pot and bring it indoors in the wintertime, just because we do get so cold in the wintertime. But otherwise, it's fabulous.
It does well here coastally in Oregon. I have a
Yeah.
very large hedge.
Or
When
Ross
I
Spring.
distill it, it does have quite a good return for essential oil.
Mhm.
But the hydrosol, I like to use a bit of that hydrosol when I cook rice. So I get that
Oh,
rosemary
As the rice water.
as the
yum.
rice water. And
Ooh,
it's
I'm coming
delicious.
over for dinner.
Road trip.
Between that and the lemon verbena, I don't know which is my favorite. If I'm doing Asian food, I'll use the lemon verbena to make the rice. But if I'm doing, chicken or something, I'll use the rosemary. It's so good. Yeah.
Well, so if we're gonna instigate, okay, if we're gonna get people to talk to their plants and maybe even listen, okay, how do we get them to grow?
I
Okay.
think that, yeah, I do think in that regard, the biggest thing, and being aromatherapists, it's
Uh-huh.
like how many of those are actually herbs, culinary herbs. If you
Yeah.
think about it, how many of them are culinary herbs? And many of them are perfectly happy growing in a small pot,
Yeah.
So why not have a windowsill full of rosemary and thyme and parsley and, because they're easily accessible to you then so that you can have that moment.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've struggled with as a gardener is everybody's getting into the hydroponics or aquaponic growing and stuff like that, which is fabulous. I think that that's an amazing opportunity, especially some of those grow towers that are available and stuff, because you can grow it in a small footprint in your house. So yes, grow it. But going back to the energetics, I like being able to have the energetics of Mother Earth. So
Mhm. And
yes,
a potted plant allows that in an
yes.
urban environment without necessarily cutting out an acre of ground.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, those potted plants I think are an amazing opportunity. And I think that when I first began in aromatherapy studies, a thing I struggled with was how many aromatherapists couldn't identify what the plant was.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that that is hugely important is
Absolutely.
be able to connect with the plant.
yeah.
And that is part of the reason that I turned more gardener than aromatherapist, even though I still work with all of my aromatherapy too. But
Right.
I wanted to be able to personally identify, oh, and be able to tell, like cilantro and parsley. Oh, that's cilantro, that's parsley.
Very important for many people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So fun. There's so much to learn about plants and herbs, and we've only scratched the surface here today. But are there any questions or comments from our audience today that
Yeah.
you'd like to ask Anna about gardening, about Yarrow, or Joseph and I? We're just so delighted to have you here. And for those of you who will be watching the replay, be sure to
I
reach
want to
out
make a shout out
to
there.
us.
If
Yeah,
you watch the replay, post that you watch the replay and ask a question or make a comment there.
yeah.
On the
And AcuAroma Therapy enthusiasts on Facebook. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's such a fun group. We're just having so much fun with that.
I
Yeah.
mean, the essence of the magic and wisdom of essential oils is to extend a really good conversation. Okay. And that conversation can include plants as long as you listen to them.
Mhm.
Okay. And can include you as long as you want to say something or share an oil or share a plant or an experience. Okay. Really, it's it's very much for me. It is a healing modality, and it isn't just me, and it isn't just us. It's all of us and the plants too, and Mother Earth too. And what's tomorrow? What's tomorrow on the calendar?
Mother's Day. It's Mother's
It's
Day.
Mother's Day. Okay. Um, it's interesting. We tend to celebrate that commercially with dead plants that look pretty. Okay. I got nothing. I love flowers. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But what if you gave your mom a rosemary bush?
Hmm?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So my mom's departed, so I've given her roses, I've given her all sorts of stuff. Okay. In fact, my gardening bug is certainly my mother's bug transformed through the next generation. Um, and there's these, I like with the house, I inherited everything in the house. I won't even tell you half the stuff I threw away. And I've got this pile of succulents. And the great thing about a pile of succulents is you can separate them out and make small piles of succulents. So that is one of my that's where the dirt under my fingernails is coming from right now. Okay. I won't talk about the grime underneath my fingernails. That's different. Okay. But Anna, maybe this is one. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you do for fertilizer when you have a lot of mouse turds?
You can't use that as fertilizer.
No, but speaking of rosemary and one of our other favorites within that plant family is mint, are supposed to help deter your mice. So bringing in some mint can help, hopefully. I mean, being in the high desert and the mice want to find food, it's a constant challenge. But yeah, I do have a lot of mint and I let that one, luckily in the high desert where we don't have a lot of rain, it stays where the rain is or where I water.
The water is, yeah.
It's not necessarily going to escape where I'm not watering. But yeah, mint is a plant that is your friend when you have unwanted critters.
They're very, very cute. I just wish they would be cute somewhere else.
Anna, did you have a little offer for visitors here today that they could maybe how to connect with you?
Well, I do have several little ebooks that I've written on my website. I'm trying to think. We had briefly, Angela and I have talked about my lilacs, which sadly have not bloomed. But I do have a book all about lilacs and how you can extend the use of them since they bloomed for such a short time. So you can extend being able to enjoy those blooms. I have a book that has some different recipes for creating like a body oil and stuff like that. But my website is annasmusings.com. And then I have the socials.
Right.
I do have Instagram and Facebook and what's the other one we've started using a lot lately? I know a lot of aroma therapists have started jumping on LinkedIn, so I do have a LinkedIn channel, and so I'm kind of everywhere.
Well,
So
here
if you want to pop
we have
into
a question
the chat.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Vera says, where would you suggest I start with a container garden? And Vera, you're up in the Seattle area, aren't you? I think she is still.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Vera, if you want to come on audio, please do. Don't worry about it.
Go ahead, Vera. I see you unmuted.
I'm in Seattle area in the city, and I have a house, but there's only a small area just in front of my house. It's more like a condo. And I have a deck where I have some, just big round containers, but my deck is south facing, super hot in the summer, and then of course cold in the winter. And so I've been trying, I tried to grow, I tried to grow kale and failed miserably. It just didn't seem to take off at all. And I want to start growing herbs. I do have some pots, like a pot of rosemary and oregano and parsley, and they seem to be doing good. But what else would you suggest?
So the reason that your kale potentially failed miserably is because kale is a cold weather crop. And we experience a lot of extremes here in Nevada. Kale will do well in the not early spring, for me, more mid-spring, but it'll do well then, and then it'll do well in the fall. But in that summertime, especially when you're in a south-facing area, because you're getting that intense heat and especially if you have it up against your house, you're getting the residual heat up from the house.
That is where it's up against my sliding glass doors, actually, which is probably reflecting even more light, more heat.
I would think you could do basil out there since it reflects so much heat. It would love basil.
Basil would do really well. The only thing, and Seattle doesn't have a lot of super cold weather, but basil will, the first sign of frost, basil will go, I don't want to live. The holy basil does better. So if you like holy basil, holy basil is a little more tolerant of some of those extreme weathers. So yeah, just really paying attention to, and I would assume you get a little more cloud cover than I do, because we're in the sun all the time. But when you're in that June solstice area, around that time, you may want to shade your plants. But a lot of your plants, like your rosemary, is probably going to do well because you do have that heat coming off of the house. Well, trying to think.
I would also encourage, you can play with making a little microclimate just by getting a shade shrub, maybe one that has a medicinal quality to it. And where you put it on the deck means for some period of the day, it will provide some shading. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can get it where it is the most south facing, or if you have more of a late afternoon heat, okay, you get it over on the western part of the deck, okay, and it makes a little microclimate just by the light of the day and shading it. Plus, whatever you're growing there.
Yeah.
I don't know that you could do it in a condo, but
It's not a condo. It's a house, but they built them like four, two behind and two in front, and so they're separate, but they're
close together like townhomes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The espalier fruit trees. You get a small apple, a small plum. Plum are beautiful. They're just a mess to clean up after. But they will do well in a container. They will do well, especially if you have a trellis behind them. And you will get a small yield of something that usually has a beautiful flower for a while and then can reliably make a fruit. Now, the Seattle Rain Festival starts in October and ends in April, as I understand it. Okay. So that's the major factor in your climate, right? And then your southern exposure means that when the mountains are out, the sun is out, right? So you're going to get a blast. So again, the microclimate, use a tree, use a small shrub, okay, on a trellis to give you a little bit of a microclimate and a little bit of buffering.
The other thing to think about, especially for your container gardenings, and I know it sounds really strange, but it actually works because you would think, well, the roots are down in the actual pot, but making sure that soil has some sort of cover, whether you're using something, oregano kind of stays low, but just making sure that you have a mulch or plants, whether you're planting close together so that your soil is shaded, because that the root systems can get too hot in your containers.
I think that's what happened with kale. The soil kept getting hard, and also something started eating it, and I could not figure out what, because
leaf cutters.
I never saw any snails, but it was really weird, but something was just eating it up.
Probably the birds. Birds actually like kale.
It could have been squirrels too. Yeah.
Those squirrels.
Yeah.
I got. We're out of time essentially, but any of you have experience growing marjoram?
Oh yes, and it's my Greek oregano and my marjoram are taking over.
Okay. What's your secret?
Talking to
I have it in a raised bed. I just have it in a raised bed and
raised bed.
Yeah, it's
Anna. What was that?
Talking to it. Marjoram, oregano is much easier, but they're in the same family.
Yeah.
So
they're cousins. Yeah.
Yeah. So but marjoram's a little finicky. So kind of like your cooking basil versus your holy basil.
Right.
Your Genovese basil is going to freak out as soon as it gets cold, whereas the holy basil can tolerate cold temperatures. So those cousins, sometimes one needs a little bit more love and kindness than the other.
That's very Mother's Day information there. I love that.
Yes, okay. Kindness. And well, thank you everybody for being with us today. Thanks, Anna, for sharing your garden wisdom with us. And I'm wishing everybody a happy Mother's Day wherever you are, even if you have a heavenly happy Mother's Day if your mother's no longer with us. So, and also give Mother Earth some love tomorrow too. All right.
Flower power.
And if you want to find Anna, it's annasmusings.com.
.com.
Yes. All right. Thank you for being with us. We'll send some
Yeah.
good energy out. Here we go. Sending
Yes, rub those hands together. Come on, Vera. We're going to send it to Seattle, okay?
Yes,
Number 5 minutes. We've got to get to
pushing it
Seattle.
north to Seattle. It's good to see
Thank
you
you.
today, Vera. It's good to
Wait,
see
we got Nevada. We got California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington all here.
you. Yep. All right.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Blessings.
much.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Thank you.